The courtroom smelled of old wood and suppressed rage, the kind that festers when truth is buried under lies. Amara Johnson stood alone at the defendant's table, her heart pounding so loud she swore the jury could hear it. She was a black woman accused of a crime she didn't commit, and the weight of every eye in the room pressed against her like a physical force. The prosecutor, a man with a voice like polished steel, paced before the jury, his words slicing through the air. This woman, he spat, pointing at Amara, stole from her employer, betrayed their trust, and thought she could walk away clean. The crowd murmured, their whispers a venomous hum. Amara's hands trembled, but she forced them still, her chin lifting defiantly. She wouldn't let them see her break. Not here, not now. The charge was theft, $10,000 in cash, allegedly taken from the safe of the upscale boutique where she'd worked for 5 years. The evidence? A grainy security video showing a figure in a hoodie leaving the store at night, and the testimony of her manager, Claire Henshaw, who swore Amara was the only one with access to the safe. The video was blurry, the figure unidentifiable, but Claire's word carried weight in this small, predominantly white town. Amara knew why she was here. It wasn't just about the money, it was about her. Her skin. Her presence. Your Honor, Amara said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her, I've never stolen a dime in my life. I'm innocent. The judge, an older man with a face carved from stone, barely looked up from his papers. The jury, a mix of skeptical and indifferent faces, shifted uncomfortably. One woman in the back row, her lips pursed, scribbled something on a notepad. Amara felt the room closing in, the air thick with judgment. She'd always known this town didn't want her. Willow Creek was a place where smiles hid suspicion, where her family, her husband Marcus, and their daughter Lila were tolerated but never truly welcomed. They'd moved here 3 years ago for Marcus's job as a mechanic, hoping for a fresh start after years in the city. But the whispers followed them, at the grocery store, at Lila's school, in the way neighbors crossed the street to avoid them. Amara had learned to swallow the bitterness, to keep her head high for Lila's sake. But now, standing in this courtroom, she felt the full weight of their prejudice crashing down. The prosecutor, Michael Vance, leaned forward, his eyes glinting with certainty. Ms. Johnson, you expect us to believe you had no motive? You, a low-wage employee, with access to thousands in cash, just happened to be at the store that night? His tone dripped with condescension, and the crowd's murmurs grew louder. Amara's lawyer, a public defender named Sarah Klein, shot to her feet. Objection, Your Honor. That's speculative and inflammatory. Sustained, the judge muttered, but the damage was done. The jury's eyes narrowed, their doubts hardening. Amara's chest tightened. Sarah was trying, but she was young, overworked, and outmatched. Vance had the room in his grip, weaving a story that painted Amara as a thief who'd betrayed the good people of Willow Creek. Claire Henshaw took the stand next, her blonde hair pulled tight in a bun, her voice trembling with rehearsed emotion. Amara was always so secretive, she said, dabbing her eyes. I trusted her, gave her responsibility, and she betrayed me. The lie was so smooth it could have been scripted. Amara's stomach churned. She and Claire had never gotten along. Claire's microaggressions were constant, from questioning Amara's work ethic to commenting on her urban hairstyle, but this was different. This was calculated. Did you see Ms. Johnson take the money? Sarah asked on cross-examination. Claire hesitated, her eyes flickering. No, but she was the only one with the key. Who else could it have been? The jury nodded, as if her words were gospel. Amara wanted to scream. She'd given the key to Claire months ago when she'd been promoted to assistant manager. Claire knew that. But the truth didn't matter here, not when the story fit so neatly into their biases. As the trial dragged on, the prosecution's case grew stronger, built on half-truths and insinuations. The security footage was played on a loop, the hooded figure moving like a ghost through the store. That's her, Vance declared, pointing at Amara. Her height, her build. The jury leaned forward, squinting at the screen. Amara's heart sank. She was 5'6", average build, hardly unique. But in their eyes, she was already guilty. Sarah fought back, presenting Amara's spotless record, her years of service, the lack of physical evidence tying her to the crime. "There's no fingerprint, no clear video, no witness who saw Amara take anything," Sarah argued. "This case is built on assumptions, not facts." But her words felt like pebbles tossed into a raging river. The jury's faces remained cold, distant. Amara's thoughts drifted to Lila, her 7-year-old daughter, waiting at home with Marcus. Lila, with her bright eyes and endless questions, who'd asked that morning, "Mama, why do they think you did something bad?" Amara hadn't known how to answer. How do you explain to a child that the world sees you as less than human? That your skin makes you a target? She'd hugged Lila tight, promising everything would be okay, but now, in this courtroom, that promise felt like a lie. The second day of the trial dawned colder, the air heavy with the threat of rain. Amara sat at the defendant's table, her red dress a gift from Marcus, her only armor against the hostility around her. The crowd was larger now, drawn by the spectacle of a black woman on trial. Reporters scribbled in the back, their pens scratching like vultures picking at a carcass. Amara's eyes scanned the room, searching for Marcus. He'd promised to be here, but his work at the garage often kept him late. She needed him now, more than ever. Vance called his final witness, a coworker named Tom Grayson, who claimed Amara had been acting strange the week of the theft. "She was always hanging around the safe," Tom said, scratching his neck. Amara's jaw clenched. Tom was lying. She barely spoke to him, let alone lingered near the safe. But his testimony landed like a hammer, the jury's nods growing more certain. Sarah's cross-examination was fierce but faltering. "Mr. Grayson, can you confirm the exact dates and times you saw Ms. Johnson near the safe?" she pressed. Tom mumbled, backtracking, but the jury didn't care. They'd already made up their minds. Amara felt the walls closing in, her breath shallow. She was drowning in their judgment, and no one was throwing her a line. The judge called a recess, and Amara sat alone, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Sarah leaned over, her voice low. "We're not done yet, Amara. We'll fight this." But her eyes betrayed her doubt. Amara nodded, forcing a smile, but inside, she was unraveling. She thought of Marcus, his steady hands, his quiet strength. Where was he? She needed him to walk through that door, to remind her she wasn't alone. As the court reconvened, Vance stood to deliver his closing argument, his voice booming with righteous fury. "Ladies and gentlemen, this case is simple. Amara Johnson had the means, the motive, and the opportunity. She betrayed her employer, her community, and the trust we place in people to do the right thing." The words landed like blows, each one stripping away Amara's humanity. The jury leaned forward, their faces a mix of pity and contempt. Sarah rose to counter, her voice shaking but determined. "This trial isn't about evidence, it's about prejudice. My client is innocent, targeted because of who she is, not what she's done. You have the power to see through these lies." Her words were passionate, but Amara saw the jury's eyes glaze over. They weren't listening. Not really. The judge turned to Amara. "Ms. Johnson, do you wish to make a statement before the jury deliberates?" Amara's heart raced. She stood, her legs trembling, and faced the room. "I'm not a thief," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I'm a mother, a wife, a person who's worked hard every day of her life. I don't know who took that money, but it wasn't me. I'm asking you to see men at the story they've told you." A hush fell over the courtroom. For a moment, she thought she saw a flicker of doubt in the jury's eyes. But it vanished as quickly as it came. The judge dismissed the jury to deliberate, and Amara sank into her chair, her strength fading. The room felt like a cage, the walls lined with eyes that had already condemned her. Minutes stretched into hours. Amara's mind raced, replaying every moment of the trial, every lie, every glance that cut her down. She thought of Lila, of the life they'd built together, now hanging by a thread. She thought of Marcus, his promise to stand by her no matter what. Where was he? The jury filed back in, their faces unreadable. The foreperson, a middle-aged man with wire-rimmed glasses, stood. Amara's heart stopped. This was the moment that would decide her fate. She braced herself, her hands gripping the edge of the table. And then the courtroom doors swung open. Every head turned. Marcus Johnson strode in, his work boots echoing on the polished floor. His face was a storm of determination, his eyes locked on Amara. In his hand, he held a small, battered notebook, its pages worn and creased. The room fell silent, the air electric with anticipation. No one had expected this. "Amara," Marcus said, his voice cutting through the tension. "I've got something they need to hear." Marcus's presence filled the courtroom like a sudden gust of wind, shifting the atmosphere from suffocating to electric. Amara's breath caught in her throat, relief and fear colliding as she watched her husband stride toward the front. His grease-stained work jacket and steady gaze made him look like a man who'd fought battles before and wasn't about to lose this one. The judge's gavel hovered, forgotten, as every eye followed Marcus. "Your Honor," Marcus said, his voice low but unyielding, "I have evidence that proves my wife's innocence." He held up the notebook, its worn leather cover catching the light. The prosecutor, Michael Vance, shot to his feet, his face reddening. "Objection. This is highly irregular. The defense has had ample time to present evidence." Sarah, Amara's lawyer, was already standing, her eyes wide with hope. "Your Honor, if this evidence is relevant, we must allow it. Justice demands it." The judge's brow furrowed, his fingers tapping the bench. "Mr. Johnson, this better be substantial. Approach." Marcus stepped forward, handing the notebook to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. "This belonged to Claire Henshaw," Marcus said, his voice steady but laced with urgency. "I found it in the back of the shop where I work. She dropped it last week when she came to pick up her car." The courtroom buzzed, whispers rippling through the crowd. Claire, still seated in the witness area, paled, her hands twisting in her lap. Amara's heart pounded as she leaned forward, her eyes locked on the notebook. What was inside it? And why did Marcus look so certain? The judge flipped through the pages, his expression unreadable. "Explain, Mr. Johnson." Marcus turned to face the jury, his voice carrying the weight of years of unspoken pain. "Claire's been keeping 2 sets of books for the boutique. One for the taxes, one for herself. That $10,000 didn't disappear, it was never supposed to be in the safe. She's been skimming cash for months, and when Amara started asking questions about the store's finances, Claire needed someone to take the fall." The crowd gasped. Claire's face crumpled, her hands flying to her mouth. Vance sputtered, "This is preposterous. There's no proof." "There's proof," Marcus cut in, his voice like iron. Pages 12 to 15. Dates, amounts, and Claire's own handwriting detailing every transaction she hid. Including the night she staged the theft to frame my wife. The judge's eyes narrowed as he scanned the pages. He handed the notebook to the clerk. "Read these entries aloud." The clerk's voice trembled as she read, October 3rd, moved $2,000 to personal account. October 10th, $3,500 cash withdrawn, safe adjusted. October 15th, $10,000 cash removed, left hoodie in break room to stage theft. The final entry sent a shockwave through the room, blame Amara. She's the perfect scapegoat. The courtroom erupted. Reporters scribbled furiously, jurors whispered, and Claire shrank in her seat, her face ashen. Amara's hands flew to her mouth, tears stinging her eyes. She looked at Marcus, her rock, her protector, standing tall against a room that had tried to tear them apart. "Your Honor," Sarah said, her voice steady now, "this evidence clearly exonerates my client and implicates Claire Henshaw in fraud and perjury." Vance's face twisted with fury. "This is a stunt. That notebook could be forged." "Then let's verify it," Marcus said, unflinching. "Claire's signature is on every page. Her fingerprints are on it. And I've got a witness, Tom Grayson's brother, who works at my shop. He saw Claire drop the notebook and heard her talking about making sure Amara takes the fall." The judge banged his gavel, silencing the room. "Order. Ms. Henshaw, take the stand." Claire stood, her legs shaking, and shuffled to the witness box. Her earlier composure was gone, replaced by a nervous twitch in her jaw. I don't know anything about that notebook," she stammered. The judge's voice was cold. "You're under oath, Ms. Henshaw. Perjury is a serious offense." Claire's eyes darted to the exits, then to the jury, then to the floor. I made a mistake," she whispered. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." "A mistake?" Amara's voice broke through, sharp and raw. She stood, ignoring Sarah's gentle tug on her arm. "You lied about me. You tried to destroy my life, my family, because of what? Because I'm black? Because I was an easy target?" The room fell silent, Amara's words hanging in the air like a thunderclap. Claire flinched, unable to meet her gaze. The jury shifted, some looking away, others staring at Amara with new eyes. For the first time, she felt seen not as a defendant, but as a woman, a mother, a human being fighting for her truth. The judge dismissed Claire from the stand and turned to the jury. "In light of this new evidence, I'm declaring a mistrial. Ms. Johnson, you are free to go. Ms. Henshaw, you will remain in custody pending an investigation into these allegations." Amara's knees buckled, and Marcus was at her side in an instant, catching her before she fell. She buried her face in his chest, sobs shaking her body as the weight of the last weeks lifted. The crowd was ablur, some faces shocked, others ashamed, a few defiant. The reporters surged forward, shouting questions, but Marcus shielded her, guiding her toward the exit. Outside, the rain had started, a soft drizzle that felt like a cleansing. Amara clung to Marcus, her voice muffled against his jacket. "How did you know?" "I didn't," he admitted, his eyes soft but fierce. "But I knew you. And I wasn't gonna let them take you from us." They drove home in silence, the weight of the day settling into their bones. Lila was waiting at the door, her small face lighting up as she ran into Amara's arms. "Mama! You're back." Amara held her tight, tears falling freely now. She looked at Marcus over Lila's head, gratitude and love anchoring her. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Claire was charged with embezzlement and perjury, her carefully crafted facade crumbling under the weight of evidence. Tom Grayson, shamed by his brother's testimony, admitted to lying under pressure from Claire. The boutique's owners issued a public apology to Amara, offering her job back, but she declined. She was done with Willow Creek. The town itself was forced to confront its own reflection. The trial had exposed not just Claire's crimes but the undercurrent of prejudice that had fueled them. Local papers ran editorials, some calling for unity, others deflecting blame. Community meetings were held, tense and raw, as residents grappled with the truth. Amara and Marcus attended one, standing together as they shared their story. Some listened, others argued, but the conversation had begun. Amara found work at a community center in a neighboring city, a place where her warmth and resilience were valued. Marcus's garage thrived, word of his integrity spreading far beyond Willow Creek. Lila, ever curious, started asking bigger questions about fairness and kindness, and Amara answered as best she could, planting seeds of hope in her daughter's heart. The trial faded into memory, but its lessons lingered. Amara carried the scars of those days, the fear, the anger, the betrayal, but she also carried the strength she'd found in herself and in Marcus. System, Marcus. They rebuilt their lives, not in Willow Creek's shadow, but in a new community that saw them for who they were. What does justice mean to you? Truth prevailing, or a community confronting its flaws? Share your thoughts, and let's talk about healing divisions.